See how we're going. Hello, everybody. Are we live? Yes, we're live. How you doing? Hi, everyone. Now it's English. I've been reading your chat. So the first conversation we had was in Hebrew, and for some reason, somehow the chat was still mostly in English, with people complaining that it's in Hebrew, or just bragging about them being able to understand every 10th word or so, because you apparently every 10th word that you were saying was English. So now it's proper English, you guys. You don't have to practice to listen how Hebrew sounds like, or to try to guess the like from a little bit of the Hebrew school you had every Saturday and things like that. But so welcome to proper English stream. Now I'm just saying, the comments on the live stream in the Hebrew one were so funny. So Chaim Ben Pesach, I'm so happy to have you here again. And I'm excited to talk about the journey and actually the activities that you've been part of when you as a protesting for the release of Jews from the USSR. And I actually kind of wonder how much it had, how much did it have part in what actually brought up the USSR in the end of the day, if any at all. I'm just curious about it. So please, if you could introduce yourself and tell about the activities you've been part of. I'm sorry, I forgot my English. I'm so excited. Just this is the way it is.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation. Before we begin, everything I say, I'd like to dedicate to the Ilui Neshamot, to the elevating of the souls for Malka Bat Meir and Allegra Bat Shlomo. I'm Chaim Ben Pesach. Our organization in the United States is called the Jewish Task Force, JTF, and I was the national chairman of the Jewish Defense League, the JDL, when we led a historic international campaign to free 3 million Soviet Jews. In the end, over 2 million were released because of that campaign. You ask if we played a role in the downfall of the Soviet Union. I think it did play a role. I think that the fact that people saw that there was a massive campaign demanding an end to human rights violations in the Soviet Union, showing the barbarism and the cruelty of the Soviet regime to the whole world, exposing this before the whole world, I think that it did have an impact in bringing down the Soviet Union in the end. We have to remember, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't. Okay. I'm just happy because this is, I've been saying in Hebrew, and what I'm excited about, because that's, I know how much you have impacted, the psychological impact it had to see the American Jews fighting for the Jews that were left behind the Iron Curtain, or whatever it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my family as well. So yeah.
We saw that from 1917, the year of the Bolshevik Revolution, until 1969, for 52 years, there were no protests on behalf of Soviet Jewry. And the issue was a dead issue. Nobody spoke about it. Most people didn't even know that the issue existed. It was all forgotten about. Once in a while, there would be an article in a Jewish magazine, but very little attention was paid to what was happening to the Jews behind the Iron Curtain. They were the forgotten Jews. In fact, there was a book written called The Forgotten Jews, referring to the Jews of the Soviet Union because they were forgotten, until the JDL came in and reminded the world that there's a problem here. We saw what happened during the Holocaust. We in the JDL, who are followers of Rabbi Meir Kahana, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha, Hashem Yikom Damo, we saw what happened in the Holocaust when American Jews sat back and did nothing while 6 million Jews were brutally murdered. And we were determined not to be silent again, now as 3 million of our Jewish brothers and sisters were held behind the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union. And American Jews were silent again. We saw the same thing, history repeating itself. So we were determined to end that silence. There were two things we wanted to do. There were two points in our strategy to free the Soviet Jews. Number one, we had to publicize the problem because nobody even knew the problem existed. The Soviets denied that the problem existed. The Soviets insisted Jews don't want to leave. Nobody wants to leave. That's nonsense. The Soviet Union is paradise. Nobody wants to leave the Soviet Union. And nobody spoke about it. So
what year was it? Can I ask?
It started in 1969. We started in 1969.
You
And
started at 1969?
the JDL started. I didn't start. I was too young in 1969 to start. I joined the JDL when I was 14 years old in 1971. But eventually I became the national chairman. Eventually I became the leader of the organization when Rabbi Kahana made Aliyah. And when he was in the Knesset, I was running the JDL in the United States. But the problem of Soviet Jewry, again, was not well known. And we had to publicize. It was essential that everybody know that Jews are being persecuted in the Soviet Union and not being allowed to leave. That was the first thing we had to do, publicize the issue. Second, the Soviets desperately needed good relations with the United States and the Western world because their economy was in terrible trouble. Always. Communism doesn't work. Communism is a catastrophe. So their economy was always in bad shape. And they needed trade. They needed wheat shipments. They needed technology from the United States, desperately needed good relations with the United States. And so if we could harm the relations between the United States and the Soviet Union and say, we're going to hurt those relations and we're not going to let you have good relations until you free the Soviet Jews, we knew that that would give us the bargaining chip that you need to get the Jews out. We knew that that would happen. So those were the two things we wanted to do. Now, we set about a campaign that was very controversial in the United States, but that proved successful in the end. We went around bombing Soviet diplomatic targets in Washington and in New York. Now, we didn't hurt anybody. We didn't injure anybody. We didn't kill anybody. But we damaged Soviet diplomatic property. And that got tremendous attention to the issue of Soviet Jewry. It became one of the leading issues in the news all the time in the 1970s in the United States, 70s and 80s. One of the big issues. And so the problem was publicized. And once the problem was publicized, big American Jewish organizations that were silent during the Holocaust, did nothing to free the Jews during the Holocaust, and did nothing for Soviet Jewry, they had to act because the issue was being so heavily publicized. They had to do something at that point. And so all of a sudden, Jewish organizations that did nothing for over 50 years, all of a sudden, you saw signs in front of every synagogue, free Soviet Jews. There were demonstrations every year with 250,000 Jews coming out to demonstrations in front of the UN at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, demanding freedom for Soviet Jews. All of a sudden, there were campaigns in Congress and elsewhere to free Soviet Jews, tying American trade to freeing Soviet Jews. The Jackson-Vanik Amendment. All of these things happened because of the JDL campaign. Now, why were people so stunned when we set off these bombs? Why did these bombs just caused damage to property? We didn't blow people up and kill people the way other bombers have done historically. We deliberately, by the way, went out of our way not to injure any of the Soviet diplomats because we knew that that would backfire. We knew the Soviets were not murdering Jews at that point, and they were holding them hostage, but they weren't murdering them. And so if we had killed Soviet diplomats, it would have backfired. So when we did the damage to Soviet diplomatic property, we did it at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. Make sure nobody's around. Make sure that it just damages the property. But why did it get so much attention? Bombings that were much more dramatic got much less attention because people were shocked that Jews are doing this. American Jews always have to be so respectable and so careful and don't want to antagonize and don't want to cause anti-Semitism. And they're so worried. That's what people always expected out of the Jews in America. So when Jews went around and started bombing, it shocked everybody. And we got massive attention to the issue. Massive attention. And it did hurt Soviet-American relations. Why did it hurt Soviet-American relations? Because the Soviet Union was a superpower, a great superpower. They can't ignore when somebody attacks their diplomatic property. They've got to protest as part of their national pride. The Soviet Union is not Luxembourg. They can't ignore things like that. And so the Soviets were saying this is hurting Soviet-American relations. And in fact, it hurt Soviet-American relations so much that Anatoly Dobrynin, who was the Soviet ambassador in Washington, was called back by the Kremlin to Moscow. And the Soviets said, we're not going to have an ambassador in the United States until you stop these JDL attacks on our diplomats and on their property in America. It had gotten to the point where the Soviet ambassador had been recalled and they were refusing to send an ambassador to the United States. That's how much these attacks had affected Soviet-American relations. We knew we were winning when that happened, because when that happened, we knew the Soviets could not afford to be in a situation like that. That this was a situation where they couldn't afford to have this type of tension with the United States when they needed the United States and a good relationship so badly. Now,
what was the trade like? This trade situation back then between the two countries?
They had billions of dollars in trade. They had billions of dollars in trade. But the Soviets couldn't even produce enough food for their people. They had to import wheat and other things from American farmers, and we were interfering with all of that. But our campaign interfered with all of that. It created tremendous tension. And so, but by the way, George Bush, who eventually became president, George Bush Sr., who eventually became president, Rabbi Kahana, we held a sit-in at the American consulate in New York, the American mission to the UN, to demand that the United States take more action to free Soviet Jews. We held a sit-in, to its peaceful protest in front of the American consulate. And the ambassador there at the time was George Bush, who eventually became president. And he came out he came out of the consulate to speak to Rabbi Kahana. And he said to Rabbi Kahana, do you know that you are severely hurting relations between the United States and the Soviet Union? This is what George Bush told Rabbi Kahana. Your campaign is hurting relations between the two superpowers. Again, when we saw that happening, we knew that we were on the right track, because the Soviets couldn't afford that. They were eventually, we told the Soviets, if you want good relations, free the Jews. Otherwise, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. Now, the Jewish organization, big Jewish organizations in America, they kept saying, we're going to cause anti-Semitism. We're going to cause, the opposite was true. There was so much admiration on the right, Americans on the right, not the left. The left always is against Israel and the Jews. But on the right, there was a lot of admiration for what the JDL was doing. People, Senator Henry Jackson, when he announced he was running for president, invited us to his press conference. People invited us to Washington. Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina, who was an anti-Semite, who was admitted, I didn't like the Jews, he used to say. He didn't like the Jews because he said they were all they were leftists and they worked against his re-election. After he met with us, he became the biggest defender of Israel and the Jews after he met with us. He loved us. I mean, people had great admiration and respect. Jews are being brainwashed in Israel now to believe that unless you give in and unless you act like Shimon Peres or some leftist and go begging for peace, that you're going to cause the world to be against us. The opposite is true. The more you give in, the more you surrender, the more you bow down, they're going to hate you even more. When you win, like in the 6-Day War in 1967, when you win victories, that's what the world admires. The world, even in the recent war with Lebanon, they were condemning everything Israel did in Lebanon, everything Israel did in Gaza, if you remember, in Gaza, condemning everything until the beepers. The beepers went off. Innocent people were injured. You would think they would condemn that. They didn't condemn the whole world.
They weren't innocent. They were terrorists.
They admired it. They admired what Israel had done with the beepers. And I mean, because in the 1967 war, when Israel won in 6 days, that was the peak of Israel's popularity in the United States. When you win victories like that, even anti-Semites can't help but admire this. Say, wow, those Jews in 6 days, what they did. This is what happened with JDL and Rabbi Kahana. Commentators on television were saying the JDL is like David, and the Soviet Union is like Goliath, is like Goliath. They were comparing us to David against Goliath. I remember I was being interviewed on CNN, which at that time was a huge station. At that time, it was because this is before the internet, before the age of the internet. Everybody watched television. That was the big thing. And someone interviewed me on CNN, and they asked me, they said, "Aren't you? This is hopeless. You're fighting against the Soviet Union. An organization like yours, you're going to fight against the Soviet Empire. Aren't you like David against Goliath?" And I said, "We are like David against Goliath. But if I remember correctly, in the end, it didn't turn out that badly for David." And so we continued our campaign, And we saw in the 70s, for the first time in more than half a century, they were letting Jews out. In the 1970s, they let 33,000 Jews out. In 1973, they let 35,000 out. In 1974, 1975, more. In 1979, they let over 50,000 Jews out. They were allowing Jews, they weren't allowing them all out, but they were finally releasing tens of thousands of Jews every year. They were allowing them out. They were giving them visas to leave. If we hadn't done what we did, the Jews would have been lost. That would have been the end of it. Because, number one, even when the Soviet Union fell, the new Russian authorities that took over under Boris Yeltsin when the Soviet Union fell, they weren't going to give the Jews visas either. They were going to deny the problem existed. If the JDL had not been there to publicize the problem, they would have said, Soviet Jew, nobody wants to leave. What are you talking about? There are no Soviet Jews who want to leave. They would just lie and deny that it's happening. The world would ignore it. And the Jews would still have been hostage there. The Jews would never have gotten it. So, we had to do what we did when we did it. Baruch Hashem, thank God, the Jews did get out because of it, but it's an important lesson for the Jewish people. We cannot be silent when our brothers and sisters are in danger or when there's trouble. We cannot be silent. And we have to act when our fellow Jews are in danger. By the way, if anybody has any doubt that the JDL campaign was responsible for freeing the Soviet Jews, the Jewish leaders who condemned us admitted that we were the ones responsible for freeing the Soviet Jews. They admitted it. Jerry Goodman was in a debate with me on CNN on Crossfire. Crossfire was the big show. That was the premier show on CNN, had tens of millions of viewers in the 1980s. Again, this is before the age of the internet when everybody watched TV. Jerry Goodman was the executive director of the National Conference on Soviet Jewry, the umbrella group for all the big Jewish organizations, the ADL, the American Jewish Congress, American Jewish Committee, AIPAC. They're all part of the National Conference on Soviet Jewry, the umbrella group. And Jerry Goodman condemned me on the show and said, what you're doing is wrong. We condemn violence and we condemn, and this is wrong and you shouldn't be doing this. That's what Jerry Goodman said. But he said, but I will admit that I would not be acting for Soviet Jews, and none of us would have been acting for Soviet Jews if not for what you in the JDL started. You started, you created this issue. And because of you, all of us are acting now on this issue. He admitted that on the program. B'nai B'rith, which was the biggest Jewish organization in America at the time, an organization that had 500,000 members in the 1980s. They have a magazine called B'nai B'rith Monthly. And in their magazine in April 1985, they said it was JDL actions that pushed Jewish leaders into action on Soviet Jewry. It was the JDL that did that. They admitted that, and they always condemned us. That's a left-wing organization. They always condemned us. So there's no question that, sometimes you have to do things that at the time are not popular and at the time are politically incorrect. But if you do that, you can change history. You can change history. I remember the first thing I did very first action I did, I was 14 years old. And the Soviets had something called the Soviet Leningrad Ice Follies, they called it in English. And they came to Madison Square Garden and they were going to show ice skating, Soviet ice skating, and they're very good. The Soviets trained people very well. They made sure that they're
Yeah, you know how they trained them though?
With drugs and with
not drugs, not necessarily drugs.
What else? Tell me.
I just they would separate them from the families and just take them to camps for training and just deny them from any happiness, to be honest.
Sure. No, absolutely.
And not necessarily drugs. No.
Okay. Anyway, but they came with the ice follies.
Or not just drugs, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rabbi Kahana came to me when I was 14 years old and said to me, we need you to do something important for Soviet Jewry. And I was shocked that he's turning to me, a 14-year-old kid. And this is Rabbi Kahana, the great Rabbi Kahana, asking me. And I was shocked. He said, they know, the FBI and the police know all of our members now, but you're only 14 years old. Nobody's going to suspect you. You can get into the Leningrad Ice Follies. Our members can't get in anymore. They already are all well known. You're a 14-year-old kid. You can get in easily. Not only that, because you're 14 years old, no judge is going to give you any serious punishment because of your age. We want you to do something.
Which to me, it sounds a bit iffy. Sorry, because minors don't really know always what's good and what's bad. just because that happened to be a just cause, just, I don't know, I feel like
Well,
it's
I think, if we train our minors to love their fellow Jews and fight for their fellow Jews, that I think is good. That I think is good. But anyway, in any event, so I agreed to go in, and I went with Rabbi Kahana gave me a big bag of marbles, and I went into the performance, and the lights went out, and they started playing the Soviet national anthem. And when they were playing the Soviet national anthem, I ran up on the stage and spilled all the marbles on the ice. And the main Soviet ice skater got so nervous because JDL at that time had a reputation for being, they're really, they were all nervous. He tripped and sprained and hurt himself and couldn't perform. So they had to cancel the performance. And then the Soviets canceled their performances in Baltimore, New York, San Francisco, all over the country. They were going to have performances. They canceled it all because they said, we're not going to perform if you allow these Zionist hooligans to do this. The police came. The police grabbed me. Well, first they had Soviet security people. They were, of course, KGB. They had Soviet security people there. They grabbed me immediately and gave me a good beating. They really gave me a good beating. I was a 14-year-old kid. And then the police came and pulled me out of that. And as I was leaving, I was screaming, "Free Soviet Jews, free so," because the media all came. They see the guy arrested being taken away in handcuffs. I was screaming, "Free Soviet Jews." My family, my parents were proud of me. My parents were proud of me. I had beautiful parents. Zichronam livracha, may they rest in peace. They were very proud of me. But I had other people in my family. I'm not going to say who, but I had other relatives in my family who were very wealthy, successful American Jews. And
if they were wealthy, successful American Jews, maybe let's if they were wealthy and successful American Jews and they didn't want their nephew or whatever to do those things, then use your success and money to find a better way to do things, like to bring attention to those things, I was like if you show an alternative, because the fight is just, it's just. So if you don't like this one, then bring a different one where everybody could agree, what, this one would work too, and you don't have to risk your own future for the people of the USSR. I'm just saying that, because I here in my channel, we believe in personal responsibility. Your 14-year-old nephew says, "Hey, I have to do this because of that and that," and you say, "You know what, this is a just cause," and you're a wealthy, successful person, then use your brain and find a better solution to do exactly the same thing.
I agree with you. The problem, of course, is that the wealthy, successful Jews didn't do anything until we forced them to because of our campaign. But they invited me to their house, and they brought over the heads of major Jewish organizations to the house to convince me that what I had done was wrong and will hurt the Soviet Jews in the end. That's what they brought.
So they chose inaction instead. They thought inaction would.
They brought me over to convince me that you shouldn't do this. This is going to turn people off. This is art. This is ice skating. What does that have to do with repressing Soviet Jew? You don't do things like that. So they brought me over to the house to do that. And I was a 14-year-old kid, so I was confused. I didn't know what was right, what was wrong. So I went to Rabbi Kahana. I told him what happened. I told him my family brought over American Jewish leaders to tell me how wrong I was and everything else. And Rabbi Kahana said, "Well, you can do what you decide to do in life. That's up to you. But I want you to remember something," he said. He said, as far as upsetting people that you're doing something, he said, never be afraid to upset the polite people when challenging injustice. That's what he told me. And I never forgot that. And I've been doing that ever since. I've been upsetting the polite people ever since when I challenge injustice. But our philosophy was, we didn't care if it was popular or unpopular for us. We were interested in results to free the Jews. That's the only thing we cared about. I dreamed in those days, day and night, about freeing Soviet Jews. I dreamed that the day would come when we'd have Jews like you coming here, like you, who would be born and raised in Israel and speak and you speak Hebrew like an Israeli. And I dreamed that this seemed like an impossible dream. This was our dream. This is what we dreamed of. Day and night, we dreamed of this. And people told us it was impossible. There was no way. They said this. So you don't realize that the Jews are 1% of the Russian population, but they're 50% of the scientists and the engineers and the professors. They're never going to let them out. That'd be a brain drain. It would hurt them. You're not being realistic. You can't do that. You can't succeed. You're not being realistic. They're not going to do it. Everybody told us that, and we refused to believe that.
Yeah, right. They had no issues planning to send them to a gulag or to Bilobijan when Stalin was like, what is I love this logic. Or like, no, they actually had planned to exterminate the Jews. So I don't know, didn't that bother them back then that the 50% are professors? Like, well,
Stalin, by the way, and Stalin, of course, did execute many Jewish doctors and professors.
right.
And he murdered many Jewish, many of the Jews who were, some of them were very loyal communists. Some of them were loyal Jewish communists, and he murdered them. He put them in front of firing squads. He was paranoid. He thought that
he had paranoia.
He believed there was a doctor, the doctor's plot, the famous doctor's plot, where he felt Jewish doctors are plotting against him, and he had
to be honest, there should have been.
Yeah. Maybe so, but it was
this joke.
But in reality, it was a lie. It was all a lie. And anyway,
well, there are speculations that they didn't exactly rush to save him once he had a stroke. But I mean, if you antagonize the best doctors, then that sucks for you anyway. But actually, and there is a joke, like Stalin and Beria joke, whereas Stalin goes to Beria. Beria is the head of the KGB, and asking how many of the how many are opposing me and how many support me. And it's like 90% oppose you and 10% support you. And it's like, can we do something about that? Like get rid of the 90%. They're like, yeah, we can do that, but the percentage is gonna stay the same.
So anyway, this campaign changed Jewish history. I mean, it changed Jewish history in the end, because the Jews from the Soviet Union that made Aliyah, that came to Israel, they changed Israel forever. They brought a technological revolution to Israel. The Jews from the Soviet Union are brilliant Jews also. A lot of brilliant Jewish geniuses came and really made Israel a much wealthier, greater, stronger, and more Jewish country. So it's something that did change Jewish history. And I very much hope that people will give credit to Rabbi Kahana for that, because Rabbi Kahana was a great Jewish leader, and a terrible injustice was done to him. He was banned from running for the Knesset in Israel, while Arab parties that call for the destruction of Israel, that hate all non-Muslim infidels, they hate all the non-Muslims, and they hate the Jews in particular, and they're allowed to run. But Rabbi Kahana was banned from running, and in the end, he was murdered by Al-Qaeda. He was murdered by Al-Qaeda terrorists in New York. So it was a terrible injustice, but he was a great leader who did many things that really changed Jewish history, changed the face of modern Jewish history, and changed the state of Israel, and made Israel a better place.
Let me address a few things. There's some comments that I've highlighted. Edu is saying, finally, the Jews developed some balls after 1948 to act against the violence against them. That confidence comes when you have your own nation. By the way, how do you feel about the American Jews now, the way they are now?
Well, first of all, I believe all Jews should live in Israel.
Right.
I think all Jews should make Aliyah. I think it's, as a religious Jew, I believe that we're commanded to live in Eretz Yisrael. We have what we call kibbutz galuyot, the ingathering of the exiles. And when God does that, we're required to go back to Israel. We're not allowed to live in America. Most American Jews are very assimilated. And let me put it this way. 78% of the Jewish vote went for Barack Hussein Obama when he ran for president in 2008.
Oh my God! When he was such a popular figure,
and in Israel,
I was a child. Listen, in Israel, I was a child. Okay, and I was like, okay, this dude gets a lot of hype. I opened up his speech. I listened to it, And I was like, this man is an idiot and he's awful. And then I went on a 1-minute campaign to tell people that, like, what are you supporting? Like, just listen to one of his speeches. Just, it doesn't make, it's nonsensical, it's dangerous, and he's a like, it's like, why? Like, just listen. It doesn't have to be a speech about, I listened to something random, you know. I just said, okay, let's open up, like, hear him talk. And I said, like, no, this man is, no, like, just from like listening to his this ability to have an illogical reasoning inside, like in the same sentence. I was like, that's that I need.
By the it shows by the way the disconnect between Israeli Jews and American Jews. Polls taken in Israel showed that he had only 3% approval in Israel. Only 3% of Israeli Jews liked him, and
I'm talking even before Israeli Jews knew who he was.
78% of American Jews voted for him. What a difference between American Jews and Israeli Jews. The difference is tremendous, tremendous.
How do you think we can, what could we do? Like, for a long time, there was this thing that, like, the relationship between Israeli Jews and American Jews. Like, how can we mend that? Because a lot of Israelis I know were like, okay, so they are living in America. Why do, what's our job here? But there is another notion. It's like, okay, it's time to reverse the power balance and to go and then get to talk and bring the American Jews into our fold.
You have two different segments of the American Jewish community. You have the religious Jews, who are about 500,000, the Orthodox Jews, they're about 500,000. They are loyal to Israel. They vote 95% for candidates who they believe are pro-Israel. They're not like the other Jews. That's 500,000. That's only 10% of American Jews. The other 4.5 million American Jews, most of them are liberal. They're assimilated, and now they're shocked that the anti-Semites are attacking them since October 7th. The anti-Semites are all attacking them and demonstrating against them. So you have two different segments of American Jewry. I think Israel has to do what Israel has to do to survive, and not worry about what American Jews or anybody else tells them. They have to do.
Not about telling, about like influencing them, like getting to reversing it, like, you know, like building our education systems, like education facilities, let's say, or something.
I think Israel has to build their own education system and you know, to me, do I think that American Jews have a right to give their opinion on what happens in Israel?
No, I don't think so.
I think they do on one condition. If what they say will strengthen Israel, if they pressure Israel to be stronger, that's good. But if they try to weaken Israel, that's a crime. That is a crime for a Jew to do that to Israel.
I feel like a lot of times, like, American Jews, what interests them is like don't want to have a backlash, like everything that, like, they are against anti-Semitism in the United States, but they don't care about anything, like, about the quality of our lives that would result from them being like, okay, we want this because what drives them is like we want to have a good life, and, like, you know, that whatever happens there affects us, and that's what drives them, instead of like we want Israel to, or we care about what's good for Israel.
During the Holocaust, when 6 million Jews were murdered, the worst crime in human history, American Jews didn't have even one demonstration, not one thing to save the Jews during the Holocaust. Nothing.
But wasn't there like this occasion where they beat up the Nazis in the streets of Manhattan in New York?
That was after,
like
they did have they had situation like that, but that's not to save the Jews in Europe. That, you know, that was just
to save themselves. You're saying
whatever. But that was good. What they did is good. I'm not against what they did. I thought that was good, and they showed the Jews. When Jews decide to fight back, they can be very tough. They showed that, and that was good. But to save the Jews during the Holocaust, only one person led a campaign. There was Ben Hecht and supporters of Zev Jabotinsky, right-wing Jews, they did try to lead a campaign to save the Jews during the Holocaust. And Ben Hecht is a famous playwright, and he did many famous movies like Gone with the Wind. He was the producer for Gone with the Wind and the director. And he together with Jewish activists led a campaign to try to save the Jews in Europe. And the American Jewish organizations condemned him while he was trying to save the Jews who were being gassed and burned and massacred. So American Jewry has a lot to atone for. They have a lot of things that they did that were terrible, and that's one of the reasons why JDL came into being during the Soviet Jewry movement. We were not going to allow that to happen again to our brothers and sisters in the Soviet Union. We were not going to sit back and allow that to happen again. And Jews today have an obligation to speak out. They have an obligation to speak out and defend our heroic soldiers in Israel and the heroic people of Israel in their battle for survival. And not just the Jews. This is not just the Jewish battle. It says in the Bible, I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. The Gentiles, the non-Jews, according to the Bible and all the prophets in the Bible warn that you must support Israel and stand by Israel and defend Israel. This is something that's an obligation for all of humanity. This is something that all of humanity is obligated to do. And, and we have righteous Gentiles who do that, who do stand up and defend Israel. And that is something that should definitely be encouraged, because this is a battle for all of humanity. What the Arab Muslim world wants to do to Israel, they want to also do to the United States. They want to do it to the United States and the Western world and to the whole and all the non-Muslim infidels and all the non-believers. They want to do the same thing. The Quran and the Hadith don't command them just to destroy Israel. The Quran and the Hadith do command them to destroy Israel. But they also have to destroy the United States and Western countries. They don't recognize legitimacy of any non-Muslim country. And so the battle of Israel on the front lines is a battle for humanity against barbarism. And it's something that all decent people, Jewish and non-Jewish, should be supporting and should be speaking up about and should not be silent about. Because if we're silent, we're going to face catastrophe. We had the attack on October 7th, and in the United States, we had the attacks on 9/11 at the Twin Towers. They will do that over and over again, and they'll do it eventually with nuclear bombs if they get their hands on nuclear bombs. God forbid, they'll use nuclear bombs someday also to do it. So we had better wake up and wake up fast.
And therefore, we want to annihilate Islam of this world, don't we?
Well, I think that Islam is I think that Islam is a religion that preaches hatred of non-Muslims.
Islam is a religion that preaches hatred.
Right. It's a very, very no. There's no question. It's a very serious problem for the world, a dilemma for the world. There are 57 countries in the world that are Islamic, and you've got between 1.5 billion and 2 billion Muslims in the world. That's a huge population. That's between 20 and 25% of the whole world's population. That's a huge group of people who believe in it.
Yeah, but so they should stop believing in it. I didn't say kill people. I say remove the
No, I understand. I understand. No, I understand. I understand what you're saying, and I obviously I think that people should not believe in. Obviously, I think people shouldn't believe in something like that. I think it's terrible, and I think we should be on the front lines of supporting other countries in the world also that are in a struggle against Islam. We should support India against Pakistan. I think that Israel and India should have good relations, and I think that we should make people aware of the fact that Pakistan is an illegitimate country. Pakistan was created by the British colonialists. Pakistan is part of India. This was stolen from India. This is something that should never have happened. We should support India, and in the United States we should defend India when India is under attack in the United States. India is also fighting a battle against Islamic fanaticism and terrorism. And the Pakistani regime is a regime that promotes terrorism and fanaticism. And there are Islamic groups in India that are promoting fanaticism and terrorism against the Hindu majority. So we should be supporting India in their struggle as well. And we should be supporting In other countries where there's a struggle for survival, in this case, we should be working on the side of justice and on the side of righteousness. And you have a religion in Egypt. Over 90% of women have received what they call female circumcision.
Yeah, it's not the same though.
Their clitorises have been cut off. I mean, I'm sorry to be so graphic, but it's horrifying. Horrifying.
It's FGM.
I mean, 6-year-old girls, they do this when they're 6 years old. The mother holds the girl down and the father cuts. This is horrifying. How could they? Now, if they do this to their 6-year-old girls, what do you think they would do to us if they had the chance? I mean, this is horrific. And this is over 90% of Muslim women have undergone this barbaric procedure. I mean, this is a religion where we're going to say, well, that's a legitimate religion. No, it's not legitimate to do things like that. That is not legitimate. I'm sorry. Not legitimate at all. It's barbarism.
It is.
And the things that are the preaching and the hatred and the calls for, what they did on October 7th to the Jews in the outskirts of Gaza. What they did on October 7th is what Muhammad did in the Quran. They got this from Muhammad. Muhammad did the same thing in the Quran. That's why they were so proud. Even the German Nazis, who, no question, the German Nazis were very evil. What they did was monstrous.
Yeah, it does paint them in a bit more humane light, doesn't it?
The German Nazis, even the German Nazis tried to hide their crimes. The Arab Muslims in God, they were proud. They were showing it on their WhatsApp and showing it to their families. Look what I did to the Jews after they murdered and raped and burned Jewish babies and did horrific in front of their parents. I mean, how could people be so cruel and celebrate? The problem we have is that Jews and also Western people in general think, oh, they've got to be just like us. They're probably just like us. They want to have a better life and want what's best for their children and want to live in a nice neighborhood and want to go to nice schools and want to be successful. They want just what everybody else wants. No, they do not think like us. Would we behave like that? Would we do things like that to children, to little girls? Would we behave like that? Would we ever even? It's unthinkable. And they do these things and they're proud of it. So they're not like us. We better wake up fast.
Indeed. David boy, when Allah falls, the civilized world will cheer. Indeed.
They've taken control of much of the news media because they have so much money. They have huge amounts of money. They have trillions of dollars for petrodollars from the oil sales. They don't produce anything, by the way, themselves. The only thing they have is oil. That's the only thing they have that they produce. Almost the only thing they have is oil. And even the oil, they don't know how to produce themselves. They have the infidels come in and drill and do everything else. They don't even know how to. They don't even know how to produce the oil themselves. And they're getting trillions of dollars. What robbery! This is the biggest robbery in history. Trillions of dollars have been taken from the Western world and put into these primitive societies, who then use it to promote terrorism and hatred and madrasas. The madrasas where they teach children to hate infidels from the time they start growing up. It's a cruel, very sad thing. It says in the Talmud that he who is kind to the cruel will in the end be cruel to the kind. If you have mercy on the cruel, in the end you're going to be cruel to the merciful, and that is true. We can't afford to be silent when these terrible things are happening. Israel's battle is the battle of all of humanity against injustice and barbarism. All of humanity has to be part of that fight.
It does.
And hopefully, hopefully people will realize that. And again, God says in the Bible, God, if you don't believe this, you don't believe in the Bible, because the Bible over and over, hundreds of times, the prophets warn the nations of the world to defend Israel and support Israel over and over again. That's the one clear message that you see throughout all the prophecies of the Bible. And so the any country that wants to be blessed, any people that want to be blessed, bless Israel and you get blessed. Curse Israel and in the end you're going to get cursed one way or another. It doesn't always happen immediately because it's a complicated reason why it doesn't always happen immediately, because God wants to give us free will. And
I love your. It's funny. I'm like, I don't believe in. I'm an atheist, technically speaking. Like I said, like I don't even like bring God into anything. But I think like it's true, like but like this is true. You can say it's God, but you can also say it's just because the truth is on our side, and it's always has been.
You can't say, but you can't say it's just because the Jews, the fact that the prophets in the Bible, Haneviim, the prophets in the Bible told us thousands of years ago that we're going to return.
Because you have to be blind not to understand that those who have the better moral system are those who, if you curse them, you're going to get cursed, and if you bless them, you're going to get blessed.
Yeah, but why? Why?
Because of the morality.
Because the ruler of the universe is moral. Because God is moral.
Because the reality is moral. That's just the way it is.
We live in a world where it's very possible to be very cruel. Very cruel.
It does, but it doesn't work. Long term, it doesn't work.
Most of the world is cruel.
But it doesn't work. Long term, it doesn't work.
We see, but we do believe that in the end there's going to be one thing that Judaism does say. In the end, the good guys are going to win.
Yeah.
The good guys are going to win in the end. And the reason the good guys are going to win in the end is because God has promised us that we're going to win. And when it says in the Bible, 10 of ye shall chase 10,000 of them, and five of ye shall chase 1,000 of them, and 10 of ye shall put 10,000 of them to flight. In other words, little Israel, this is thousands of years ago this was written, little Israel is going to chase enemies that outnumber them 100 to 1 and defeat them in breathtaking victories. This is written thousands of years ago. Everything we see in the Bible is coming true before our very eyes. God is fulfilling his prophecies in the Bible, and we should believe in that. We definitely should. It's something that should make people happy even in the darkest of days. Knowing
I like that. Somebody is asking for your advice. I'm sorry. I just
sure.
You were in the middle.
Please go ahead.
An old soul, I wonder, what can we do for the Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, and other minorities? I mean, I don't think there are any Jews there, but Christians for sure. Other minorities in Bangladesh today. How can we make more noise for their rights to exist?
I don't know exactly what could be done, except that one thing is for sure: you shouldn't be silent. You should speak up about it. In the war between Pakistan and Bangladesh, there was a war between West Pakistan and East Pakistan in 1971. The Pakistan Muslims, both Muslim, the Pakistani and the Bengali army, both Muslims. The Pakistani army murdered 3 million Muslims. 3 million Bengalis were murdered. Their fellow Muslims they murdered. They committed a Holocaust there. If this is what they do to each other, what do you think they would do to us if they had the chance? So, people should wake up and people should speak up about this, and we should tell the story of the Pakistani Holocaust, and we should let the world know that these terrible things are happening. And there's no question that the minorities are being persecuted in Bangladesh. By the way, the Hindu minority in Pakistan is also being persecuted. There's a Hindu minority in Pakistan. And we should speak up and support those minorities. Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the very least, we should raise our voices, speak up, and organize, and make sure that get people's attention, and make sure that people know. First of all, make sure they know that the problem exists. We got to make sure people are aware. Most people don't pay attention. They don't know the problem exists.
I love it. Now here's the problem. Like, you cannot say, you can check the history and apply. Because at this point you're like, cannot tell you what to do. It's what I think about, the Brits now with the situation where they're at. I say, right. So it's the British mandate that they had. they tried to split the land here. They split, like, I mean, they had, because they took away Jordan, they split the land in Pakistan, India when they were there. And now they're trying to do it to themselves. Like the British government is trying to split their own country, like, you know, give it away. And I was like, I made a video for the Brits, and like, you know what? Just go learn what happened in Pakistan, like in India, Pakistan, and in Israel. See how your mandate behaves, because now your own mandate is doing it to your own people, right? It's not, apparently this it was, at least they were not hypocrites. You know what I'm saying? At least they do it to themselves as well. But it, like the
I
same
don't think they do.
situation.
No, I don't think they're doing it to them. They don't want Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland.
No,
to
I'm
be
talking
free.
about them giving up to the Muslims.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm not talking about like the.
No, it's
you know,
crazy. The whole
the
thing is
way I'm
crazy.
talking about. Don't you think they're behaving exactly the same way that they had behaved when they had a mandate here and mandate in India and things like that, like trying to please the Muslims and like cater to the Muslims and things like that. They do it in their own country. I'm saying at least they're not hypocrites.
Well, they do it out of fear, because they fear the
And
Muslims.
whatever they, it doesn't matter why they do it.
And I think
The bottom line is
and
this.
by the way, I agree with you. And it's crazy. It's crazy when they do it in
And
their
I
own
said,
country
like, I
too.
cannot tell you what to do, but go and check how Israel and India got their independence and apply whatever, like, interpolate and understand yourselves, you know.
I think
And they
India,
don't need to
I think Bangladesh and Pakistan both should be under Indian rule. I think that's all part of India. That was artificial what the British did. They had no right to take that away from India. They took that away. They stole that from the Indian people. And I think that I think India has a right to Pakistan and to Bangladesh. Those are parts of India. They were taken from India, and the British had no right to do that, in my view, in my opinion.
And why is that?
Because you can't go into a country and seize control of a country, as they did for many years. They ruled in India, and then dictate to them what their borders are going to be, and dictate to them under what rule they're going to have. And
You think the Indians were not at all like interested in that solution, like they like not wanting to mingle with the population that took upon themselves a certain ideology?
I don't know how all of the Indians felt. I know that tens of millions of Indians, Pakistani and Muslim and Hindu, left because of that. Many Muslims fled to Pakistan, and many Hindus in Pakistan fled to India as a result of that. I don't think they enjoyed.
But isn't it just the same left?
You think they enjoyed leaving their homes and having to?
I don't think so, but it's somewhat of the same leftist mentality that we have, like this thinking that you can separate, right? And then it's like they didn't want to mingle those two ideologies. And you could understand, like even the Hindus, like, you know, you could understand why they'd be like in the same mentality, by the way, which I don't want to judge, but it's the same mentality that you're proposing, right? When you're saying like, okay, so we have to separate populations in any, like whatever shape, like, you know, you just.
No, but what I'm suggesting for India is the same thing I'm suggesting for Israel. For Israel, I'm suggesting Israel.
So what do they do? What do they do with the Muslims in India?
Okay, but first of all, territorially, what I'm telling India, what I
no, territorially 1%.
Territorially, I want Israel. I want the whole land of Israel to be under Jewish rule, and I think the whole Indian subcontinent should be under Indian rule.
Okay, so that's an interesting question. Okay, so because I think that's where we're gonna have a more like neutral and more like analytical / like objective answer. What should India do with the Muslims that
I don't know what the answer
are there?
Is. I don't know. I don't.
I'm just, that's the interesting thing, right? Because it's a bit different.
But I have to give you an honest answer. I don't know, because they have so many Muslims living there, such a huge Muslim population, not only in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, but in India itself. You have a huge Muslim population, huge Muslim minority. So I don't know what the answer is. I think it's a very serious problem. And I support and I agree with the Hindu government there, what they're doing. I think that they deserve to be supported when they take action to protect their rights. I think they have a right to protect themselves. and I support the Hindu majority has a right to protect themselves in a situation like this. But what the actual solution is, I don't know, because it's such a big problem. In Israel, we have a solution that's easier because the numbers are much smaller. In Israel, we have several million Muslims that live in Israel, and we've got to encourage them.
Yeah, but let's not talk about Israel. I do it on purpose. I
know.
For
no,
the
I understand. I'm very interesting. No, you listen. You know how to ask the interesting questions. You ask all of the good questions. But no, it's because of the numbers are so big. I don't know. In India, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. But I do think the Hindus have to be strong there. I think they shouldn't make concessions.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think they have to be strong. They shouldn't, because you make concessions, it's only going to lead to more demands, and it's going to be an endless process. But in Israel, as I said, I think in Israel we have a solution that in Israel we do have a solution.
I mean, I know. I said it because on purpose.
Sure. No, absolutely. Interesting.
Like don't get me wrong. The Central Asia is pretty empty. If we're being honest, Central Asia is pretty empty. That could be a solution for Indians.
If they could, fine. I'm not. I don't know. I don't know how practical.
I mean, I'm just saying. Just like on a more objective, moral perspective, right? You could say the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I just don't know. I don't want to tell people something if I don't know enough. If I don't know enough. I know
it's an interesting question, isn't it?
Israel, absolutely interesting. Very good question. In Israel, but in Israel,
it's like you're saying.
In Israel, the Arabs want to leave. The Arab Muslims want to leave, and
we should allow them to do so.
Absolutely.
I also believe so. I also believe in that. I'm saying, like, I don't believe in saying anything like why. All we have to do is allow them to get out, and that's it. It's like let them go, just like the USSR had to open the door for the Jews to leave. Such an easy solution, Stalin. You didn't even have to work too hard. You could have just opened the door and let Jews leave, and they would have, and you wouldn't have to work so hard and try to collect them or anything.
Yeah, but the left in Israel doesn't want the Arabs to leave. You know why? Because if the Arabs leave, the left doesn't want that. Because if the Arabs leave,
they lose the grasp of power.
Israel will be too Jewish if the Arabs leave, and they don't want that. They want a large.
So who's the problem here?
The problem is the left. The problem of the Jews. That's the problem.
Okay. And a self wonder, they divide us because they want us to stay dependent on them, to them, and for our resources to capitalize to us for their profits, so they can exist.
I agree. I agree. I think, and by the way, I think that's what the British colonialists did. They deliberately divided the Hindus and the Indians, deliberately created divisions among people. They deliberately did it with the Arabs and the Jews, also in the Middle East. I think the British colonialists did that on purpose to create dependence. I agree.
Interesting. We're just gonna raise cost of living for all. What is this? Is that how you get? This how you?
That's what they always say. They always say that if they do the work that others won't do, and you can't live. Not true. No,
they don't like working.
Not true.
It's against their religion.
Yeah, but still, they are a burden on the country, and if they weren't in the country would be much more secure, and that's true for Israel, and it's also true for India. Again, because of the big numbers, I don't know what India can do about it, but it's true for India too.
I mean, the proportions are the same.
True, but because the actual raw numbers are so big in India, it's very hard.
I don't see what difference it makes if the proportions are the same.
No, just because where do you find a place to put so many people? That's the question.
What are you saying? I told you the whole of Central Asia is empty. What are you talking about?
But how do the Central Asia want them?
You have Turkmenistan. You have Kyrgyzstan. You have Kazakhstan.
But they don't want them. But they don't want them.
Oh, interesting. But nobody wants the Arabs either. So this is where the interesting question is.
No, the Arabs actually, there are places because of the numbers involved.
Because the numbers are smaller, you think they'll be fine. They'll be able to.
No, I do think. I think there are places.
I think maybe a small percentage of them would, but most won't.
I think, first of all, first of all, Romania, just as an example, Romania. You know that Romania at one point asked for 1 million Arab workers. They asked Israel, "Can you give us 1 million Arab workers?"
What?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
This was under Sharon when Arik Sharon was the prime minister. They
What?
asked him, "Can you give us 1 million? We need workers. We have a work shortage." I mean, in Chile, just one country in South America, not a very big country, in Chile, there are 500,000 Arab Muslims in Chile now.
And they are making, and they are so destructive there.
You know what the name of their, you know what the name of their soccer team is? Palestine. That's the name of their soccer. Palestine.
I'm Chile. I'm sorry. They're awful everywhere.
But the point is, there are countries in the world that are willing to accept them. There are countries in the world that want them. Fine.
Yeah, but that was before. That was when they were still stupid. Now everybody knows who they are.
No, they still, believe me, there are countries in the world that would still accept them. And my philosophy is, if you want them, we're very generous. We're more than happy to give you all.
I believe it. I 100% believe it. First of all, that's step one, right? And then the problem is that you have to be ready. If not enough, if you still have a good amount left after that step, and then we're the same India and Pakistan,
in Greece, there are 30,000 Gazans in Greece. How did they get to Greece? Greece doesn't want them. And they're 30,000, but they got in. You know what they did? They built ships in Gaza, despite the danger from Hamas, despite all the danger.
Maybe we can have a ship factory in Gaza.
They built their ships themselves.
Okay, Chaim. I have an idea. Okay, we're gonna claim that we want to we want to have a better economy in Gaza. We're gonna build a ship factory in Gaza with really, really bad security. And those are good ships, so they get you wherever you want in the world, and very bad security. We always have a sleeping guard in there. You're a project, we have guards, and
I think if we let them go and found places for them, and I think we can, 90% would want to leave tomorrow. 90% would want to leave.
And they want to leave. They want to leave.
Yes.
They want to go, for sure, 100%.
So why? But isn't this crazy that we don't do something to get them out? This is insane.
And, but why do you think we get all this pressure from the world? Because nobody wants them as well. That's part of it too.
But there are places, certainly in third world countries, there are places where they want them. Where they would want them, and again, and they would live very well.
Yeah. First of all, a way out needs to be built in some way, or whether we build a ship in a ship factory front or whatever. Something has to be the option has to be there. That's also the humane thing to do. I was saying, why are Israelis allowed to go out of here and choose their own state, and Arabs not? You racists.
And by the way, I don't think it's just in Gaza. I think the Arab citizens.
No, in general, everybody.
I think they would leave. Yeah, I think if we gave
them, a lot of them would.
We helped them.
A lot of them did. A lot of them did. Ever since October 7th.
Sure.
Because Absolutely. They can. By the way, they can. Israelis, Arabs can, and so a lot of them did, from what I've heard.
But if we offered them help and made it easier for them, they would almost all.
I don't think it's a good, because it's gonna be, it's too much money. I don't want to. I believe I think the right thing to do is to find a good business solution to stuff, because I want to also have to make money out of our suggestions and not losing.
Yeah, it's the best investment you could ever make.
No.
It's the best investment. Getting that.
No, because I'll tell you what, they'll move to whatever land, and then suddenly Israelis cannot have a nice vacation in Thailand. I'm sorry, that's not good either.
You want to know? I'm more worried about
See, this is what the problem. I want to be. I'm that's the generation gap. I think. No offense. I want to travel around the world and in Thailand without anything bothering me. So that is also
you're going to have people bothering you anyway, no matter where you go now, because we're hated.
I know, it's a
Okay. You're
problem.
gonna have that. You're gonna have that
Did you
anyway.
see Amsterdam? Did you see
But,
what
but
happened in
one thing,
Amsterdam?
but one thing I can do for you, if I was in charge, or if Moshe
Get rid of
Feiglin, if Moshe
Islam.
Feiglin,
Amazing.
Moshe
What a
Feiglin
good idea.
and were in charge, at least you would know in Eretz Yisrael you'd be safe. At least there you'd be safe. It would be your homeland, and what prosperity! This would turn. Eretz Yisrael.
Okay. Do you think I was born with big eyes just because? It's part of, like, it's also my, it kind of reflects my personality, like my, you know.
Well, anyway,
I want everything.
No, but believe me, you would love living in an Israel like this. After we solve this problem, it would be like paradise. It would be like
I'm
Gan Eden.
sorry, we're still
Like
not
Gan
gonna
Eden.
have rainforests. There are no rainforests around us. I'm not compromising. I just want Islam gone. Anyway, thank you for being here. That was really a fun conversation. I hope you enjoyed my humor.
I absolutely enjoyed your humor, and you as always, you always have the best questions and the most interesting programs, always. And I thank you
so
very
much.
much. And people
Thank
who are
you for
more
being
interested,
here.
people who are interested, by the way, can go in Beivrit, hayamin.org is our website in Hebrew, and in English, jtf.org. I thank you so much for another.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks. Thanks.